Hi again, welcome back, and this time what we're looking at is Macbeth Act 1 Scene 2. So following on from yesterday where the witches had established that sense of chaos, that sense of disruption of nature and that pervasive sense of evil that goes throughout the play, we're now looking at how that chaos is established further through the theme of war and the themes of violence and brutality, basically. It begins in the stage directions again, similar to yesterday, with a bleeding captain. The captain is sometimes referred to as a sergeant. He is essentially a soldier. Now, what I would do, and I should have said already, is I would take a pause and get this written down. Okay, so I'm just going to step back a few pause, get your quotes written down, please. Okay, a bleeding captain is a sergeant or a soldier, and therefore he symbolizes war. And this is part of the chaos and disruption in Scotland. And do remember, this play takes place in Scotland, despite the fact that it's written by Shakespeare, who was writing in England. So it's a Scottish play as a tribute to James I, who originally was King of Scotland and continued to be King of, well, Scotland and England at the time, and Ireland as it happened. So he is a bleeding captain. Immediately we're introduced to this blood imagery that goes on throughout the play. If you think about how the witches were supposed to affect us as an audience, this blood creates that sense of discomfort, that sense of excitement as well, though, because blood, gore is part of our human nature. We actually get quite excited, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. Brutality is something that affects us as an audience. So this blood imagery is hugely powerful. It again establishes those themes of violence and reinforces the sense of disruption and chaos that's established at the very start of the play. So the bleeding captain is used as a device by Shakespeare to describe Macbeth to us. That's important to remember. Remember, this isn't just a story, this is a deliberate construction. Shakespeare's put this play together. He says, I'm going to have a bleeding captain and he's going to describe Macbeth. Let's look at how he describes Macbeth. He immediately gives him almost a title. He calls him Brave Macbeth, and I would say there is a nice simple quotation to use. Remember, you don't have to use big long quotations. That's why I'm selecting smaller ones here. Brave Macbeth. It shows that he is a hero, that he is heroic. He is celebrated. He's celebrated across Scotland. And essentially what is happening here is that he is being established as a tragic hero. So this is the starting point for a tragic hero. He begins in a very high position of power as a celebrated, heroic leader. So he is established as a tragic hero. That's further developed as we go through this, and you'll see the pattern and the process of the tragic hero as you go through the play. The key thing that you have to understand is right now Shakespeare has put Macbeth on a platform, on a podium. He's very high up. He's very well respected, just so that he can strip him back down again, bring him down, and that is the journey, the downfall of a tragic hero. He's heroic and celebrated. What Shakespeare is doing is establishing him as a tragic hero so that he can bring him down and bring about his tragic downfall. But he deserves that name. That extra clause added in there emphasizes he is well known. And admired. He's well known and admired. This is the perfect start for a tragic hero. Look at what he does. Another favourite section, these two words here, disdaining fortune. If we take fortune first, what is Macbeth doing? Well, he's disdaining, which essentially means disrespecting or going against. He's going against fortune. Now, fortune is like, if you think of a fortune teller might tell your future. So fortune is your future in this case. It could also be your fate. And that ties very closely with God. And we'll look at that in a moment. If you say he's disdaining fortune, he's going against his future, he's going against fate. And it's more of the celebration of him. He's defying the odds. He shouldn't really have won this battle. He was outnumbered. He was on his own from the descriptions, and he carves his way through the soldiers with his brandished steel. He's going against his future. He's going against what should have been his fate. He's therefore defying the odds. Now that's where we start to see, if he's disdaining fortune, it was believed by some Christians at that time, and still is, that God would have had a plan for you and a plan for everyone. If he's going against his plan, if he's going against his future, then he's going against God. And I'm only putting that there as a question for you to think about. Is he going against God? And if he is, then is this foreshadowing his later acts of violence where he continues to go against God and go against the divine right of kings? We'll come back to that. Look at what he does, or how he does it. He uses his brandished steel. Now the steel that's being referred to there is his sword. So he uses his sword to go against his future or his fate. Is this foreshadowing later acts of violence? So on the battlefield, I'll put a question mark on that one again because it's something for you to think about. On the battlefield, he uses his sword to change his future. Does that suggest to us that later in the play, he will also use his steel, his sword, to change his future? And of course, you'll probably know at this stage that he certainly does use his steel, his swords, his daggers, and so on to change his future. So we see a man, a character, a warrior who is established as a tragic hero, who goes against the odds and is brave and heroic and able to win very convincingly in battle. Under the surface of that, we see this subtle foreshadowing. Is he going against God as well? Is he changing his future and fate, which would not have been seen as a good thing by many of Shakespeare's audience at the time? And look at the metaphor and the imagery of war that Shakespeare uses. Smoked with bloody execution. So we have a metaphor. It's a bloody image. Again, I would just remind you that that creates more dramatic effect. And as an audience, we're engaged with this brutality. We're engaged with this violence. And we're in some ways celebrating Macbeth. In other ways, some of us might be a bit taken aback by some of the brutality. And I'm going to show some more images of that in the next video. So we see that his sword smoked with bloody execution, essentially emphasizing the heat of battle. And I would also add in there, it emphasizes his ferocity in battle. He is ferocious. So it emphasizes the ferocity of battle. It's smoked with bloody execution, and I would wonder again, is this foreshadowing later executions? Is this foreshadowing the execution or the assassination or the regicide of King Duncan? Other murders I'll put down there. Bit messy at the end, but I think that gives you, and I'll step back, you can freeze that, make sure you've got your annotations done, and I'll leave that until the next one. Hopefully that gives you a summary of Act 1, Scene 2. I am still going to look at one or two other images in the next video, and I'll recap on this then as well. Thank you.